I know. I was supposed to do this book review a long time ago. But I lost my copy of the book, and so then I had to find it, and then I had to finish it. So now here we are. This is a book review for Brittany Renner's book called Judge This Cover. Now, at first I was a little worried about whether or not I should show you guys the cover of the book. I was hoping I don't get in trouble, but I saw someone else do a book review and they showed the cover, so I really do think that it should be safe. I hope it's safe. Please be safe. I do not want this video demonetized or to be taken down. But without further ado, I'm going to review this book. The first thing I want to say is I'm going to be reviewing this book with the full knowledge and understanding that I find Brittany Renner to be a very attractive woman. However, me wanting to put my dick inside of this woman will not prevent me from pulling my punches against the product that she has sold. So let's actually get into it. So I think the first thing I'm going to talk about is, well, say the cover of the book. And so you guys will see, this is the cover of the book. This is what Brittany Renner has given us. And so I want to start off by saying this. I honestly do feel that the book is a bit impractical. I think what I mean by that is the cover. You can't really bring this book into polite society and without having a conversation with someone about it. You're gonna have to explain to them that this is not porn. Because you have a naked woman, and by the way, if you see the back of the, like, usually people will see the back of the cover. Again, if you see the back of it, you're gonna have to have a conversation about what the contents of this book is. So I feel like I don't think Brittany really considered kind of how ill-conceived this idea was by having herself be naked on this book, because it becomes very impractical to have around children sometimes. You can't really read this book while a couple of toddlers or even, elementary school kids are around. So I do also want to say that I don't really think that the cover of this book fits thematically. And what I mean by that is the point of this book, or the themes of this book, is Brittany recounting 7 relationships that she had that really affected herself and the different lessons that she's learned. But I don't really think that the cover of this book really reflect that. And the reason why is because I don't really see what her being naked kind of has to do with anything. I guess one could say that she's trying to show herself as vulnerable, but even then, the imagery she has invoked with the cover is one of Eve holding the apple, which actually the fruit of knowledge and good and evil isn't really an apple. No one really knows what that fruit is, but I'm just being a nerd at that point. The imagery that she has invoked with this cover is not one of vulnerability, but definitely one of sexual enticement and sexual power. So if the idea is to show us that she's bearing her soul with her nakedness, her positioning does not really reflect that very well. So I don't really think that this is actually a very good cover. I don't think that this cover really reflects the contents of the book. Now, like, some can say that you don't judge a book by its cover, and we'll actually come back and talk about that idiom in a second. But what I want to say is that the point of the idiom is to say that you don't put all of your expectations in the cover of the book, but that doesn't mean that you can't derive some information from it. Even some of the simplest of book covers can give you a good tone of what the book is going to be about. For example, one of my favorite books is Aragon. Aragon has in most publications I've seen, has a portrait of a blue dragon on it. You don't really, the book's going to have something to do with dragons, and even its blue imagery does have this air of tranquility, or this theme or this tone of tranquility, or very simple. There's not really a lot of stakes that go on in Aragon. There are some tragic things that happen, but it's not as dramatic as, say, the book Eldest is when you get to the second book in the Aragon series. You know, it's much more bold. The color is red. A lot more dramatic reveals happen. A lot more sad things are occurring in this book. The covers of the book are reflecting the tone of what the book is going to be about. You can't really derive what the story is going to be other than there's going to be dragons in them. But once again, you can see that the tone is being set. The same thing with, I would say, the Percy Jackson series, The Lightning Thief. You see a young boy that has a sword staring at the Empire State Building with a horn in his hand. The point of a book cover is to entice you to read it. You're confused. Why is this young man standing out in the middle of nowhere with a sword? Where did he get the horn from? The book cover is supposed to entice you to want to see what is in the book. And so while you cannot judge the entirety of the book on the cover, its tone is still reflected in that. I don't feel like the tone is reflected in what we got here, and when we just see a naked woman standing in a pretty powerful position, especially with, again, invoking the biblical imagery of Eve eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It just doesn't, it doesn't really fit what we're going to get into. And so I spent a lot of time talking about this cover, but I feel like I have to because, again, the title of this book is specifically called, well, it's called Judge This Cover, which means that the title itself is a direct challenge to, I guess, the idiom, judging a book by its cover. But again, I don't really think the themes of the book really reflect that as well as it could have. So let's actually start talking about the contents of this book. Now that I say final verdict, I don't think that this is a very well done cover, and I don't really even think the title of the book really fits what we're going to get into. There is a bit of an allusion towards the end, which I'll read out in a second, but I don't really think it fits very much. So when it comes to the title, I think the title is a bit ill-conceived as well. I think Memoirs of a Thought definitely would have been a much better title for this book, mostly because she does mention her having sex with a lot of these guys a lot. And I think she also even refers to herself as a thought in the introduction. So I think ownership of the title of Thought would have been a very cheeky or very tongue-in-cheek way to show that she has no shame when writing this book rather than the title we gave it. But Memoirs of a Thought is just what I came off the top of my head. You know, Brittany, I think, probably could have come with something better. Excuse me. Oof. So, one thing I want to say about this book is it's a very thin book, you'll see. There's not really a long, and I feel like this book should have been a lot longer than what we got. So a general overview is, again, this book is her recounting several different relationships that she had, but she only ever really goes into detail or extensive detail in one of them, and that's the first one. In fact, the first half of the book is genuinely that one relationship with this guy named Seth, who was actually her very first boyfriend ever, I think it was. And she goes into a lot of detail there. It's actually the best part of the book, I have to say. Because after the halfway point, Brittany starts to, I would say, cut corners a bit. So the best way to describe it is like this. When Brittany first starts telling the first half of the book, she is telling a story to you. Her life is a narrative that she's recounting to you. People are characters. They have their own motivations. They have actions. They do things. But in the later half of the book, Brittany starts telling you, the audience, what happened. It's actually better to say she starts ranting to the person she's talking about what they did. And there's a huge loss of detail there because the person that she is talking to, like, knows what happened. So she doesn't recount every minute detail to people that knows what happened. She's just telling them, hey, you made me feel this way. I did these things for you. The problem here is, I don't know what this nigga did. I'm not this nigga. I don't know what really happened here. I don't know his side. You know, so she starts off in a very strong way. In fact, so strong even that there are certain parts where you kind of miss where she's actually kind of the villain. Like in the first section of the book, how she got her first boyfriend was how she actually was the side chick to this guy who had a girlfriend back at home. The way she writes this story, she makes you think that the girl at home is incredibly pathetic. Like, she writes it as if this girl, I think her name was Jenny, I think, had wronged her. And Brittany does a really good job of making herself out to be the virtuous one in this situation. But of course, I'm a little bit smarter than the average bear, and I'm like, yeah, no, Brittany, like, you are very clearly the villain in this tale. You are not the correct person here. You are not morally correct. But she tells this story in such a way that I'm actually intrigued into her mindset and intrigued on her justifications and her rationality at that point. But then once we get past Seth, and there's a good bit that happens with Seth, she starts cutting the corner. She starts saying, you made me feel this way, I felt that way. But she doesn't really go into the same amount of detail. In fact, honestly, I think let me see. The entire book is about 133 pages. The first part of the book ends, if I am correct. Let me check this out. I think at page 66. I might be wrong here. Yeah, 66. Yeah, page 66 is the halfway point in the book. Honestly, every single chapter should have been about 50 to 66 pages. And so if we were to do some math, you could say this book could have been an easy 250 pages at least. It should have been an easy 250 pages. Brittany should have kept with the pace of genuinely telling us stories rather than her just recounting events that had occurred between her and some other person. Here, I will read off a section of the book. I think this is actually a really good example of what I'm referring to when I say she starts cutting corners, even though this is actually like towards the end of the book. This is just one that sticks out in my head. She says, "What I loved the most about you was the fact that you seemed to accept me for me. You're the first guy to applaud me for running wild in the wind. What was off-putting to so many before you saw was dope. You gave me a piece of advice that completely changed the trajectory of my life. I was on the fence about fitting an idea or being my ideas. I was imprisoned by the potential judgment of others I'd face if I took off my mask. It was written for me to meet you because I was meant to live a life without being confined to an identity that wasn't mine. You helped me see the uniqueness of my individuality I had all along." But how, though? It's my question. I mean, you see what I'm saying here, though, right, viewer? She's telling us, or more, she's telling the guy what he did for her, but because there's such a lack of detail, I don't really know what he was saying. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know how he did that. And there's a lot of different sections in this book that just kind of cut corners and saying, hey, you did this for me, you did that, but without the detail, I don't really know the extent of it. I don't really know why it had that much of an effect on her. And at that point, it just kind of becomes, honestly, just a little boring. I don't really care all that much anymore because I'm just like, I feel like I'm not actually even there. I'm just kind of like on the sidelines, you know what I mean? Like, I think when she was telling her book at first, it honestly felt like, again, I was like I wouldn't say watching a movie, but I was definitely reading a story. She told it like a narrative, but then at the end, it just became her just venting. And while it was interesting to see her different opinions, I just was not interesting as a book, I have to say. So, honestly, though, that being said, there's a lot of interesting things to dissect in this book. In fact, I could. There's a lot to dissect in this book, and so much so that I probably might have to come back and like read different sections of the book and highlight them individually. But I honestly think if I were to give my final recommendation for the book, I have to say, is it worth buying? Honestly, not really, unless you are an individual like myself. And because I specifically make videos where I talk about thoughts and thought patrollings and the mentally emotional issues of women, this book does a fantastic job of showing you what happens when you grow up without a father figure. This book right here shows us exactly the inner workings of a lot of Instagram models and all of the damage, all of the problems that they have. For me, this is a very fantastic book because I have so many different examples that I can show you and read of just how awful these women's lives truly and genuinely are, and lots of different psychoanalysis that I can put of Brittany here. So for me personally, did I get a lot out of this book? Hopefully I did, because I can use this book to help other people out when I psychoanalyze it. However, I do have to say, for the quality of the book itself, if you are not a person like myself who's interested in those inner workings, you're not gonna find much out of this book. It's not a very good book in the later half. The first half of the book should have been literally what the rest of this book was. Her telling us the stories of her life. Instead, it starts off with her telling a story, a narrative that was interesting. It just ends off with her venting. And I don't really think that there's much that a lot of people can really get out of it. I don't think there's much to be gained as much as Brittany would want. Because even at the end of it all, Brittany kind of becomes a worse person at the end of the book. Brittany does not really seem to learn, or really, she does not really seem to learn or even apply any of the lessons she's learned in her life. She as the book goes on, she does not become a better person, unfortunately. Which, I mean, maybe you could say it's good in the sense that it reflects life. That's just her life. She just didn't become a better person. But I feel that if she's going to be writing a book where the thematic theme is her recounting these lessons and how she became better, I personally cannot walk away from this book thinking that Brittany really learned anything valuable and really became a good person at the end of it all, or even became a reasonable person with reasonable standards. I can't say that after reading this book that is how Brittany came to be. And if Brittany was trying to show those themes, she fails spectacularly. If she's not trying to show those themes, well, then it really does beg into question as to what exactly were you trying to give to the audience at the end of the day. Honestly, if she just wanted to vent about these different relationships, I think it's totally fine and it is her prerogative. But again, if the book is set up with these ideas and these themes that we're going to be learning something, or that she's going to be trying to teach us something, I think a little bit more of an effort of her introspection should have been labeled out and really highlighted, so that if any young lady or any young man is watching this or reading this, they can actually get something out of it. So honestly, final verdict, the first half of the book does have entertainment value, and you will get entertainment value out of that. The later half of the book is not introspective enough to really gain anything out of it, and it's also not written into a narrative point of view that's really going to entertain you either. So should you buy this book? I would have to say not really. I do think that is a good first step if Brittany wants to continue to write, but I do think that what we got is definitely not the best book product. So with that being said, I certainly hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I know it took a long time for me to get this video review out there, but you know, I actually had to sit down and read the book and then consider my thoughts. So again, as you can see, my friends, despite the fact that I think Brittany Renner is an attractive woman, I'm not pulling any punches. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that she gave us a good product because she's pretty. She did in the first half, but afterwards, not really. I think she can improve quite a bit. So once again, I'm just gonna show you guys that, look, like, being pretty, like, you know, you gotta work harder than that. It's gotta be a little more than that. So that being said, I just hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, man, go ahead and click that like button. And shoot, go and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below, and as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.